to the Vietnamese-Americans that don't feel like they're Vietnamese enough, that don't feel like they're American enough, that grew up being told that they were too emotional, not emotional enough, too serious, not serious enough, not good at math enough, just not feeling like they're enough. I see you, I hear you, and I want you to know that you are enough and that you can become whoever you want to become. Don't feel like you need to fit into the buckets that are presented to you.
Quick intro before we dive into Han's family stories. Han is currently competing on season 37 of The Amazing Race, teaming up with her younger brother Holden Nguyen to race across the world. And she's also a lifelong athlete. Han was a varsity swimmer at Brown University, bring her competitive athletic spirit and resilience to The Amazing Race. This is a quick getting to know Han's lore. So I am super excited to have Han here today on this rapid fire Q&A. Han, welcome to Viet Boss Babes.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. I love everything that your platform is about, and I'm just really excited to tell my story to you today and just to hang out.
So just to kick us off, what is your full name in Vietnamese and how do you introduce yourself?
Yes, so my Vietnamese name, which is something that I go by with my family and at home, is Holden Nguyen. For the listeners that don't speak Vietnamese, my name means protected happiness. And my parents worked so hard and thought through what to name me. And I think growing up, since I grew up in a very white neighborhood, that was definitely a point of identity crisis within me, not feeling like I was white enough to American people. I go by Hun or Han.
Oh, that's a really beautiful and thoughtful names. And then in Bao Hun, where were your parents from in Vietnam?
Yes, so both of my parents, they're first generation immigrants. My dad is from Saigon and my mom is from Da Nang, but she's from a small village from Da Nang. So she grew up dirt poor. She loves to remind us of where she came from and how lucky we are. And my dad, he comes from a lineage of Vietnamese bureaucrats. So he was very well educated, had more money. I have the mixture of the two of high knowledge and scrappiness within my DNA, which I think is really cool.
Wow. Okay. And then when did they come to the US?
That is such a great question. I think it was maybe 5 years after the fall of Saigon. I do know that their stories of how they escaped, very riveting. My mom escaped on a boat and had to leave her parents behind, and my dad was shoved into a helicopter. And I don't know if you've seen The Sympathizer, but that scene where they're taking off in the helicopter and there's guns everywhere, that's the environment that my dad escaped in.
Wow, that's such an enriched history of how your parents came to the US, and I'm sure that also reflects on a lot of your life story as well, right? Do you take after one parent, mom or dad, more, and in what ways?
Yeah, I think there's good and there's less great qualities in every single person. In terms of the great qualities of my dad, definitely taught me that hard work leads and usually amounts to something. So putting your nose to the grindstone is something that I definitely grew up valuing. And I think for my mom, she just takes life one day at a time and is just so grateful to be alive, because her story of how she escaped Vietnam, I don't know how she's alive, honestly. And so she really taught my brother and I to seize the moment. I think in terms of on national TV, if you look at the dynamic between Holden and I think I'll probably come across off more like my mom and my brother like my dad. So I'm just going to leave that up to the viewer's interpretation.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm excited to watch more as the seasons roll out to see that siblings dynamic. I also have a younger brother, and it's night and day, the sun and the moon, that kind of dynamic. So really excited to see that on the show itself. So then that's actually perfect for the next questions I have, which is, as Vietnamese-American, what values from your Vietnamese root shaped who you are today?
Oh, I love this question because I think it's such a key indicator of who I am. And I think the immigrant mentality of put your nose to the grindstone, just because you have nothing now doesn't mean that you can't reap the fruits of your labor later. I think that's something that's definitely a key aspect of myself. So grew up very gritty, determined, wouldn't take no for an answer. And I think that's what's accounted to a lot of my success today, going to an Ivy League institution, swimming D1. But then there's also like the flip side of that. So I would say that Holden and I grew up in a matriarchy that was disguised under a patriarchy. And I think that we had a very traditional Vietnamese household with those values. And like with that comes like the role that women are supposed to play in this household. And I quickly grew up realizing that I didn't fit into that mold and like those expectations that were laid out to me. And I was also year of the tiger, and I was told that my strong personality was a bit of a curse. So there was a lot of growth that was coming around that, especially in the past year and a half since I've taken some time. I quit my corporate job 2 years ago to just get to know and understand myself and be with myself. I think that coming to terms with my strong personality and who I am is something to be really proud of and not to be ashamed of. And I think if you are curious to see it happen in real time, I do crumble sometimes on national TV about it. But I do think this is a story that is not just specific to me. Like I'm sure a lot of other Asian American women that grew up in traditional first generation households can relate to this.
I sense a little older sister vibe in your answers. There's all resilience. And yeah, I totally agree with you, especially in Vietnamese culture. Like even for like Vietnamese, it's low-key a matriarch and we're not talking about it enough. The mom is really the one who's like deciding everything.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. And on that note, I read your Substack. I think everyone should be reading your Substack. You're a really good writer.
Thank you. That's so nice of you.
And then I've been following the Reddit community. They've been popping off about Hun and Holden. I think that there's a lot of, and people can see that there's a lot of the theme around family values and honor and resilience. It feels very central to a narrative as a contestant, but also just Hun as a person. Why is that?
Yeah, I think that it has a lot to do with just how we were raised and how we were taught to like, if you want it, go get after it. And with that comes struggle and adversity. And I think that I am definitely a person that has gone through a lot of adversity, both within the inner as well as just the outer of like growing up in a predominantly white town as like an Asian American woman just trying to become herself. And I think that a huge part of who I am is because of all of the adversity that I have faced. And I do think the saying of diamonds are made under pressure, like it's a very real saying. And I'm very proud of the person that like I've become. And it makes me a little bit emotional when I'm saying that, just because like when I think back to myself like a year ago, there's no way I could have said that out loud. And I think that like when you watch Holden and I on the race, it's a struggle. It's very clear that Holden and I are struggling because we have never worked together. There's like all of this generational trauma that we're trying to fight under extreme pressure with a camera in our face and just like, trying to maintain that value that we have of like never giving up. It's really hard, but like having faith that like our lives have prepared us for this moment because we don't give up. We've never given up in our lives. Like anything that we've wanted, like we've gone and we've gotten after it and we've seized it. So I think that's something that I hope people will see as they watch us on the race.
I see. And then just quickly follow up with that before I dive into a little bit more about the dynamic between you and Holden. You mentioned that if it was Hun a year ago, you may have been able to say, I'm proud of all the things I've accomplished today. And I feel like that themes resonate with a lot of Vietnamese women, and the high standard, the high expectations. And on top of that, you're an immigrant, like second generation immigrant. That's another bucket of pressure that you were born with. What steps did you take to heal yourself and get to a point of self-acceptance and actually be able to celebrate yourself?
Yeah, for sure. I think when I had this revelation a year and a half ago of like how mean I was to myself, that was like the deciding factor of, okay, let's just take some time for ourselves to travel figure out who we are and like just be with ourselves. And I can go on forever about like my journey. Like I did solo backpacking, I did the amazing race. I ended up walking across Spain with my mom, which was a month-long journey. I also ended up going to an Indian monastery and learning how to
Wow.
meditate for a month. But like the whole journey, I would say like itself has gotten me to that point of self-acceptance. But I think that you can only get to that point of self-acceptance when you truly sit with yourself, see what's there, and only then acceptance and self-love can come from that. And I think that like something that I really want to show is self-love is possible and it's really important. And once you reach that point of self-love, like the world is just so much more beautiful. There's so much joy in every single present moment. And like, I love my life. Yeah, there's struggles and there's pieces of myself that I struggle with, that I'm still learning to accept. But all in all, I'm fantastic. And there's so many great qualities like about myself to celebrate every single day.
Every Vietnamese woman should be taking this message away and give themselves a little more grace. And so quickly dive into your teams. Your team name, the Amazing Race, is Asian Swag.
Yeah,
Where
baby.
where did that name come from?
Yeah, for sure. I think like one of the reasons that Holden and I did the race was because we really wanted to show the world that Asians are swag. And like you're probably wondering, swag is a very cringe word. What does it mean? I think for us, what Asian swag means is like Asians aren't one dimensional. Like they can be whoever they want to be. And I think both Holden and I, we never fit into the buckets that were presented to us as kids. Like very mid at math, not great at piano, like Han's too emotional sometimes, like Holden's not serious enough. These are things that were said to us growing up. And I think that like our whole thing is Asians can just be whoever they want to be. Whoever you are, own it, be proud of it because you are swag. You are Asian swag.
Okay, I would love to get a merch from that.
I don't know. Really? We're thinking about it. We're thinking
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, I would wear that merch in my next interview. And two more questions for you. If Holden had to describe you in 3 words from a younger sibling perspective, what do you think he would say?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely going to be a mixed bag. I think the first one is probably annoying. I get it.
Yeah.
I'll accept that title. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
I think the other one is as an older sister, sometimes you like you show your brother what's hip and cool, and I think swag is definitely one that my brother would describe me as. And I think the last one, which is something that I think I've really grown into and accepted, and part of it is because of our amazing race journey, is, and I can't spoil anything, but I think Holden thinks that I'm really strong. And there's a part of me that started to accept that once I heard my younger brother say that. And definitely makes me emotional to talk about. But yeah, I definitely think like our journey on this race is something that's going to be very beautiful to watch. You might hate us. You might want to punch us in the face sometimes. And I think at the end of the day, though, like you'll want to give us a hug and you'll really grow to love and root for us.
And one more question is the final question is what's one thing about your journey that you hope Vietnamese American and Vietnamese audience can take away?
Yeah, for sure. I think like growing up, I grew up in a very white neighborhood as a Vietnamese-American woman. I don't speak Vietnamese very well. It is like worse than survival level. But I would say like to the Vietnamese-Americans that don't feel like they're Vietnamese enough, that don't feel like they're American enough, that grew up being told that they were too emotional enough, too serious, not serious enough, not good at math enough, just not feeling like they're enough. I see you, I hear you, and I want you to know that you are enough and that you can become whoever you want to become. Don't feel like you need to fit into the buckets that are presented to you. I am rooting for you. I know you got this, and you are Asian swag.
And so, cảm ơn Bảo Hân for hopping on Bit Boss Babes and your busy time right now. How can the audience support you?
Yeah, for sure. If you're interested in just following your average Asian girl boss that's trying to find her way, Feel free to follow me on Substack at HonFire, like on fire, but like HonFire. And
Wait, that's
follow me
so
on
cute.
thank you. And then follow me on Instagram at Holden Nguyen. And then also, if you're interested on my brother and I's journey and want to follow along with that, follow Team Asian Swag on Instagram. I love you all. I appreciate everyone's support. Thank you so much for having me on your super cool platform. And I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Oh my gosh, and likewise, the Vietnamese community is going to be rooting for you and following the shows as you go on. I'll be rooting for you as well. Thank you so much, Bahan, for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.